I'd say as a product owner, your sort of three basic things you're constantly wrestling with is how much of this is going to be my stuff, how much of this needs to be delegated to somebody else's backlog, and how much of it needs to be connected because it will stay in my backlog, but will be done by somebody else, right? So there are two pieces to work, right? One is the stuff that will stay in your backlog and you will do, or your team will do rather. And one will be a dependency that you will have with somebody. That means you still need this work. Somebody else has to deliver this for you, right? So domain expertise, or like you said, familiarizing yourself with the backlog is extremely important. That's number one. Number two, you've got to constantly look to build alliances outside your immediate system. That means identify who your stakeholders are and find out what their personas are going to be. Like, who are these people and why are they so critical for my project? Does somebody own the money? Does somebody own the constraints? Does somebody own the resourcing? Does somebody own the use cases? Does somebody own, the customer narrative? These are all different stakeholders you will be working with on a regular basis. So number two would be identify your stakeholders and, build a relationship with those stakeholders. Number three, from an implementation perspective, get to know your system. You don't have to be an expert on the platform or on the app, but get to know your system, right? So getting to know your system essentially means that if your system is a set of convoluted moving parts, so find out the applications, who owns which part of the system. So in case there is a breakdown, when a one is becoming a zero, when a zero is becoming a one, how many pipelines are involved of how you're pushing stuff out there. From a release perspective, what kinds of check boxes you would need to sign off from an audit, compliance, governance, risk standpoint. So get a holistic idea of what happens when somebody starts the work till when the customer gets the work. And what is that checklist of activities, checklist of meetings, checklist of documentation that needs to happen at various points in time. You will not be responsible to do all of this stuff, but it is good for you to have an overarching picture of what this looks like. So step one, familiarize yourself with the domain of the backlog. Step two, build alliances outside your immediate team with your stakeholders and maintain those relationships. Have regular face time with them. Step three, get to know your system and see how convoluted that system is. I'd say that should get you to a good start. I think the pros are definitely things like the person will be more holistic in the way they perceive things. So they won't be tied to one way of doing things. They will also have, more patience with people's journey or of accepting in terms of them doing Scrum or Kanban and things like that. So having a Scrum Master also serve as an agile coach is just a career development, activity for them. The con of it could be that if this person is also coaching other teams, then their availability might be limited. And so you might not have them as much as you would like them. Generally speaking, you will do one or the other. You will not be an agile coach and be a Scrum Master at the same time, because agile coaches tend to be spread thin across the organization and they won't have responsibilities that a Scrum Master would have in terms of removing impediments for a certain team and things like that. They might have larger organizational impediments that they would need to remove. So I guess those are some pros and cons that I'd say off the top of my head I can think of. Kind of the difference between, telling versus asking, right? So when you're telling, there's a lot of instructional language as saying, try this, try this, try this. When you're asking, you're really interested in helping them get their way out of that problem. So you're helping them grow as an individual. And so coaching is such a big battle space that there's so many different tools to use. There are so many different ways to coach people. It's not the same as being a Scrum Master for a team or being a Scrum Master for a couple of teams and things like that. So your style is going to be very, very different. There are a lot of different options, so that really depends on what your aptitude is and where you want to grow your career. I mean, there's the training side of things, there is the coaching side of things, and there is the agile transformation side of things, where you become a champion of an agile transformation, where you're setting a transformation strategy for the whole organization. So you're thinking about, again, you're thinking about training, you're thinking about coaching, but from a capacity standpoint, you're thinking about basically as a project manager, you're trying to manage the agile transformation for the entire department of 200, 300, 400 teams. So depending on where you feel your skills are best positioned and your interest is best positioned, you might want to choose that. But training, coaching, transformation management, there are a whole bunch of different options.